Hey everybody, welcome to Victims and Villains podcast. I am your host for this evening, Alan Cramm. Joining me is fellow writer for Victims and Villains, Josh Howell.
How's it going, buddy?
Pretty good. It's been a while. We're usually the Marvel correspondents for Victims and Villains, but tonight we are covering Star Wars, the Book of Boba Fett. So I think
Happy
it might.
Valentine's Day, by the way.
Happy Valentine's Day. How did you celebrate?
Well, for work, I did a hot cocoa bar for the nursing staff at this nursing home today, so that was awesome. And then cooked some nice dinner for Maddie, and she baked a cheesecake, and yeah, it was nice.
Very nice. My wife and I ordered out Mexican food and watched Ghostbusters Afterlife because I had to do it for podcast prep for my show. You have to watch this podcast tomorrow night, and just to honor the late Ivan Reitman.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, probably should have watched some more Boba Fett today in preparation for this, but this was kind of a last minute, like, hey, let's do this. So here we are.
It's talking like the series.
I think you and I have different opinions on the series, so this is going to be an interesting conversation. So I'm going to let you take point on this because I think I took point on the Hawkeye episode we did back in December. So why don't you take it away, Josh? Where do you want to start with Book of Boba Fett?
Well, let's just. I mean, we're gonna get into spoilers, obviously, but let's do a spoiler-free section first. I think. Were you a fan of the Mandalorian?
Oh, I love the Mandalorian. From that first episode where it ended with the reveal of a young Yoda species creature, I was like hooked in. I was already on board because I love Jon Favreau. I like what Dave Filoni did with the Clone Wars, and I really enjoyed the style of the show. At the time I didn't understand like the technology behind it. I was like, this looks different. If this is what Disney Plus is going to be putting out, I am 100% on board. And I really enjoyed season 1 and 2 of Mandalorian, and I was very excited to see what they did with Boba Fett after they brought him back into the Mandalorian. How about you? What did you think of what did you think of Mandalorian?
I thought it was great. I thought Jon Favreau teamed up with arguably the best writer in Star Wars modern day right now, which is Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni has done so much for the Star Wars universe. He has did I say Marvel before? I meant Star Wars.
Yeah.
He's done so much for the Star Wars universe. He with the Clone Wars, he pretty much retroactively fixed the prequels, and he has since used whatever media he's given to fill in the blanks and to flesh out characters and to flesh out the universe as a whole. There's characters like Ahsoka come from him. There's a lot that he's contributed over the years, and thankfully they're recognizing that. So him teaming up with Jon Favreau for the Mandalorian, I thought was great. I think we all were very happy with that show for the most part. It showed this new character that while he had similar garb to Boba Fett, he clearly wasn't Boba Fett. And while the show was generally a family-friendly show, it was still about a badass bounty hunter. And when he needed to be a badass, he definitely was. He wrecked house, he took names, he took lives when he needed to.
Yeah.
And yet he was still more over a good guy. And more, especially in the grayness of Star Wars good or bad guys, he was more of a good guy than a bad guy for sure.
I remember there was a moment before Mandalorian came out, I was like, I bet this is a Boba Fett show, because having read some of the newer canon novels, they talk about Boba Fett's armor and how, like, what happens to it. I was like, no, they're not really giving us a great look at this guy in all these posters and trailers. So maybe that's what Boba Fett's armor looks like now. Maybe it's just stripped down to the silver.
throned out. Yeah.
Yeah. So like there was a moment I was like, this might be a Boba Fett show, and then it wasn't. I'm like, okay, like I'm still on board.
I think there's a lot of people that thought that for sure. But then when they started teasing, oh, we might actually have Boba Fett proper in the Mandalorian, a lot of people were like, okay, well, we've already got this show about a badass Mandalorian. What is Boba gonna be compared to that? And he kind of got this introduction that was half and half received well with people. He didn't. I mean, he was in his monk robe type thing, but then once he got back his armor and wrecked house on some stormtroopers and came in with Slave One, people were like, "Oh, hey, there he is. There's the Boba Fett I've longed and dreamed for." And then they ended season 2 of Mandalorian with this tease for the Book of Boba Fett, and I was stoked about that. And then I was extra stoked about it when they released the synopsis about Boba Fett, Fennec Shan, taking on the underworld of Tatooine. And it kind of looked like he was going to be like a Godfather, Mafia-style, crime lord type character type storyline. And that's what I was excited about. So I think there was a lot of hype for this show. It was 7 episodes long. What are your spoiler-free thoughts on it?
My spoiler-free thoughts is this show is a bit uneven for me, but I still enjoyed it. It does some things narratively that I still question, even though I enjoyed every second of it. I just think it's a bit unbalanced, and I think Tamara Morrison is having a blast playing this character for the first time, actually playing Boba Fett. Like, he's been the voice of Boba Fett since he was cast in 2002 for Attack of the Clones. Like, he did the video games where he was the clones. He went back and redubbed the special editions when they came out on DVD. He's been Boba Fett for years, but he never actually got to play the character until now. And I think he's absolutely having a blast in the armor. Like, looking at the press interviews, he's enjoying every second of it. I think the chemistry between him and Ming-Na Wen is phenomenal. I would watch anything with the two of them together. Cause it's not like a romantic chemistry, but just like their dynamic, I really enjoy. And I think this show did a good job of incorporating, elements from the Disney Star Wars canon that haven't been brought to the screen before, in a very surprising way, that I enjoyed.
I think that this was the most child-friendly piece of Star Wars content we've gotten in a long time. It was even, I mean, even if you could argue that Mandalorian is more hard PG than low PG-13, this definitely felt G-rated to me. This had the same writing team as Mandalorian. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are still top credited. However, and that is surprising to me. However, the showrunner for this show was Robert Rodriguez, and that is not surprising to me. With the exception of 2 episodes, his style, his everything, his vibe, and some of his favorite cast members are all over this show. And I think that's sometimes a good thing, and sometimes I think it leads to the sloppiness of the show.
I will say, like, his episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian where Boba Fett comes in and gets his armor back, has some of the best action I've ever seen in Star Wars. And that might have been my favorite episode of that season, action-wise. But then Book of Boba Fett kind of didn't deliver on the promise of a Robert Rodriguez Star Wars show. It delivered on from the director of Spy Kids Star Wars show.
Oh my, yeah. There was definitely Spy Kids vibes up in this a lot. I mean, a lot, from the casting choices to the character choices to the blatant glaring saturation boosted color choices of some certain things. I gotta be honest, I was disappointed in the show. I mean, you know, one could argue that this show should have been easier than The Mandalorian to write, because you had a character with decades of lore. He's been hyped since the 70s. He didn't have a lot of screen time in the original prequel, in the original series. We got a little bit of his childhood in the prequel series. We got bits and pieces of him in other media like the Clone Wars and Rebels and other stuff, especially the comics. And I mean, either way, he came with a lot of lore to him. Then again, that could easily be the crux. That could be one of the hardest things to write something that rises up to that hype. And so it's kind of a good thing, bad thing. But the everything from the trailers to the synopsis to the posters for this show teased a mafia-style crime lord thing. And you would think that someone like Boba, who's worked for the worst of the worst, he's worked for these guys, he's ate at their tables, he's done their bidding, you would think he would have some sense of an idea of how to take their spot, and that's kind of the theme of him, is saying, hey, I don't want to do their bidding anymore. I want to do my own. And unfortunately for me, the writing wasn't there. I think they did him wrong here. I think, besides the 2 episodes that we'll definitely get into that were a stark difference in this show, I think overall the story was written to dumb him down so much. I thought the strategic, cunning, bloodthirsty, ruthless bounty hunter that we had seen in the movies was not here. I understand he's older. I understand he's gone through some stuff. But he was not just weaker, he was dumber in this show. There were so many times where everybody around him questioned his decisions, and almost every one of his decisions were reactionary. At no point did I feel like he was of a strategic mindset. It just felt like he was reacting to everything, and even his right hand was like, you could do this better. And so I was disappointed by the show. I thought they really did a disservice to the character.
Yeah, and that's a fair assessment. How much Boba Fett lore were you? How big of a Boba Fett fan were you going into the show? Because for me, like I never really had an appreciation for the character. I always thought, okay, he doesn't really do anything. We got to know his story in the prequels a little bit, and then in the Clone Wars, but he was never like my standout character. The moment he started standing out for me was in The Mandalorian. So what was your history with Boba Fett going into this?
Yeah, no, that was, I mean, other than what we've seen on screen, I'm a big fan of Dave Filoni's animation stuff with the Bad Batch and Clone Wars and Rebels. Other than that type of stuff, like, I've never read any of his books. I've never read any of the Boba Fett comics.
Okay.
So really just the on-screen stuff. And I've always recognized him as one of the most overhyped people in the Star Wars universe. I mean, even in the original series, they got like a max of 5 minutes of screen time for this guy, plus the holiday special when he was riding around on a dinosaur, and then he goes out with a Wilhelm scream, and it was kind of lackluster for me. But he's evolved. And the lore around him has just always been like, oh, if he only had more screen time, you'd see how much of a badass he was. And there's no way he wouldn't climb out of that Sarlacc pit, So
yeah,
the idea of giving him his own series was exciting to me.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can get into that's not spoiler.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover for spoilers. I think...
I guess without getting into spoilers, was there a moment that the show turned for you? Like, was there an episode number that the show just like that was the turning point that you just didn't like it, or was it from the beginning?
I think from the beginning it was weak. I think some of the um listen, I'm not going to trash this show. There were plenty of things that were interesting in the show. There were plenty of things that I was like, okay, I do like that. But I think there was it's not a linear story. There's a lot of things that they do that jump back and forth between plot points that I thought, why'd you do it that way? Why not just tell it linearly and then we could just move on? There was a lot of flashbacks to scenes from the prequels that never amounted to anything.
Yeah,
just seemed to be like filling time, and then they do it again and again with the same scene, and I kept on thinking, okay, this is gonna eventually we're gonna see why this keeps coming up on screen, and we never did. It just felt like it was there, like, oh, we need an extra 30 seconds, let's throw this in there again to spin that 30 seconds.
That was the weirdest part. That was the weirdest part for me of the whole show. Is like, I don't understand why those moments were there with your flashback to young Boba Fett on Camino, like, because they don't even show Jango Fett in those. It's just you see Slave One fly off and he's looking out the window at the rain. It is weird. I think
there's things that I liked in this show, but I think the writing overall was the weakest point of it. Just the direction and the writing. What about you?
For me, I thought the first 4 episodes were going one place, and then by episode 5, it does a complete 180, and it never really regained that momentum for me because we'll talk about it more in spoilers. But once it did that, I was like, but I don't want to see this. I want to know where this is going, because it takes a weird turn that I enjoyed, but it's not what I wanted. So
one more question before we get into spoilers. When I as much as I liked each episode less every week, I'm still a Star Wars fan at heart, so I still would wake up Wednesday mornings, watch this before I go into work. That was still my thing. I still wanted the best for this show. When I woke up on the last Wednesday for the finale, I could have swore, and it could have just been my tired eyes, but I could have sworn that it said series finale on my app. And then by the time we watched it for dinner the next night with my wife, because she was catching up, it said season finale. Do you think this show was meant to be a one and done series, or do you think it was always meant to be an ongoing multiple season show?
I hope it's a multiple season show. I kind of hope that this show was going to be an anthology series. And I think it would have been better off if it was. Like, do an episode with Boba after the Mandalorian where he's taking over. Do an episode where you see him with the Tuscans. Do an episode where you see him flying Slave One with Han and Carbonite in the cargo hold and what his adventures were like then, or like his point of view from Empire Strikes Back. Like, there's so many stories you can tell with Boba Fett. I think he lends himself to anthology, and the title, The Book of Boba Fett, just doesn't really make much sense to me the way they did this show. I think this show has you and I have talked about this outside of the podcast. I think the show has a better title that makes more sense for it in context of other things, but we'll get into that here in a moment. So
yeah, let's pop the lid off this and go into spoilers. I
right.
think you have like a spoiler graphic.
Yeah, I do. It's up.
Something. You want to warn our folks of this? Okay, right. So
I'm gonna start the spoiler section with this question. Right. Do you think when Obi-Wan comes out in May, we're going to get 2 episodes of baby Mando and what he's doing, and just take us away from the Obi-Wan story?
I would hope not, and I've seen a few jokes about that. And most of the jokes don't make sense. Like I saw somebody saying, "Man, I hope we don't get 2 episodes of just Vader in the Obi-Wan show." And I was like, actually, that might make more sense
Yeah.
than what we got with Boba. What you were talking about with making this an anthology series, like Tales of Tatooine or
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars Tales, that would have made so much more sense than what we got. There was a rumor when Mando season 2 just dropped, when the first couple episodes were coming out. There was a rumor that there was drama on set. That who plays Din? Um,
Oh,
what's his name?
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal. So there was a rumor that he was like saying, "Hey, this is more taxing than it should be, especially since you really just need my voice. You don't need me to be there as much as I am." And the rumor was that they were going to take a break between season 2 and season 3 of Mandalorian, and then that rumor expanded to, "Oh, we're going to get a Boba Fett show." As kind of a filler for that break, and that's what we got. We got this Boba Fett show, and I'm starting to believe that rumor more and more, because the writing for this was nowhere as crisp or as sharp or as just, I mean, overall put together as the Mandalorian show. While I didn't always agree with some of the story elements in the Mandalorian, I thought that show had a clear direction. It had momentum, and you knew, you had a sense that the show knew where it was
Mm-hmm.
going. I didn't feel that way with Boba at all, and I
Do
can't believe it was written by the same people.
Do you think part of that has to do with being written in a pandemic instead of being in a room, being written over Zoom? Because I think even Mando season 2 was written in a writer's room in person. Do you think?
I I I could see filming things in a pandemic being more noticeable than written in a pandemic. I think while of course the pandemic is going to be a challenge for everything, and you can definitely tell pandemic movies now when they come out based on the background actors and the sets and everything, you can be like, that's a pandemic film. This is a film that was filmed before the pandemic and they just had to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. If it did affect the writing, I think it was more because this show was rush pushed together.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were like, we need filler, and we need to get this out before all these other ones that we've already been planning. I mean, this came out pretty quickly compared to these other shows that were announced that are just about to come out here
Yeah.
in 2022.
Because they said at the end of Boba Fett, or the end of Mando season 2, like December 2021, and it's like, okay, yeah, we have to meet that deadline now. And they they just made it. Like, it was what, 2 days before New Year's?
Yeah. And I remember when they first announced that, people were like, "Oh wow, we're gonna get Boba Fett and Mandalorian season 3 coming out at the same time." And I told people, I was like, "There is absolutely no way
Yeah.
this is going to be a leap year for Mando. We're not going to get Mando till end of 2022, and if we're lucky, and this is going to be the fill that gap show." And I really feel like that was the case. I think part of the show was answering the question of how he's alive, which was interesting. But
Mm-hmm.
also, this show was had the had the writing challenge of, we already have this awesome show about this badass Mandalorian. How can we write a show about a badass Boba that is not the same show? And so I think that's where this, "Oh, we're going to change his character. No longer is he a ruthless bounty hunter who is out for blood and ready to kill. No, he's tired. He wants to be the boss for once."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad storyline. I think for his character that probably makes sense. But the execution of that didn't really make sense to me. I mean, and I feel like they took that, okay, we've got to change him up, and took that with everything else. You know who the Tuscan Raiders are? No, you don't. You know who what Rancor is? No, you don't. And it was all of these. Actually, it's this, and it's not as bad as you think for like everything in the show. And I think that was overdone a bit.
Okay. So you mentioned the Tuscan Raiders. What did you think of the Boba as a Tuscan storyline?
I thought it was cool for the most part. I did like seeing, and we got a little bit more of the Tuscan Raiders in the Mando season. I kind of liked seeing their lore. It was definitely Dancing with Wolves type scenario. At the same time, a part of me was like, okay, but are we just going to forget that not necessarily these Tuscan Raiders, but, there's a reason why Anakin went batshit crazy on these folks. It was heavily implied that they raped and tortured his mom ridiculously, and that's why he killed him. And we've seen them in previous movies. Oh, you're pod racing? We're just gonna try to kill you while you drive past.
Yeah.
So when the elements of this show, when like the train is going and they're just opening fire on the Tuscans, I'm like, I don't really blame you. They're known for opening fire on you just for driving past. And when they tried to change the storyline of, oh, these are just the Fremen, and they just live in the desert, and they're peaceful people, and they won't bother you if you won't bother them. Oh, okay, that's not what we've known about them for the past like 4 decades of Star Wars.
And I think it is important to note that there are different tribes of the Tuscans. Sure. So I had a thought I was gonna. I think my favorite moment is my favorite episode of this show was episode 2, where they focus on the train, and you get to see Boba make his staff, and then
that was neat. That was neat. I did like that.
And then it ends with that tribal dance, which I absolutely loved. But my co-host on You Have to Watch This podcast, Devin, hasn't been watching the show. So at that point, I was like, I don't know how I feel about the show, but let me tell you this. It just ended with a dance number, and he thought I was kidding, but I wasn't. I was like, this show is crazy, man. He still hasn't seen it, and I have another anecdote about that I will tell you about later. But no, I really enjoyed the Tusken Raider storyline. It was cool seeing Tashi Station and Luke's friends from the deleted scene show up. Fun little Easter eggs like that. It was. How did you feel about the Bacta tank as a story device?
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please Stay with us.
See, that's I thought that was just messy because there were things that we saw that either you can say he's dreaming this, but then the plot doesn't make sense that he's dreaming that. So like, it's either everything we see when he's in the BAFTA tank is a dream, or we're just seeing flashbacks that aren't related to his time in the BAFTA tank. Which, because like, for example, while he's in the BAFTA tank, we see him wake up in the Sarlacc pit and burn his way out. And then we see him get beaten up and his armor stolen. Well, then later on in the show, he flies out to the Sarlacc pit and says, "My armor must be in there." And the viewer is like, "Well, we saw you crawl out. And if we saw you crawl out, that means that's what you were dreaming in the BAFTA tank." So it's I mean, that's how I read it, but then other people were like, well, he wasn't that's not necessarily his dreams, that was just showing you the past.
Yeah, I don't think I looked at it as his dreams either. I looked at it as, okay, Boba's got to go in the back of the tank for a bit. Here's how we're going to do the flashbacks. Kind of, did you ever watch Lost?
Mm-hmm.
And you had that whooshing sound that was like the signal for a flashback. The back of the tank was that whooshing sound. Like, he's in the back of the tank. Okay, we're going to tell you this story now. And then he's going to come out of the back of the tank. We're going to come back and go yell at the mayor a little bit. And then later on, maybe some more back to the tank. I
like the BAFTA tank as the thing of healing him. I just wish this wasn't like a Lost thing where
device.
I wish the first 2 episodes was just linear of him Sarlacc pit to now and showing us. I think it would have flowed better because it just felt like the modern day storyline was getting the way back burner. It was getting like 10 minutes or less of the episode, and the bulk of the episodes were these flashbacks. And I was like, okay, but when are we going to get to the story that you've been teasing us in the trailers all this time?
I also think that those first few episodes are uneven with it. Like it doesn't focus.
Way uneven.
It's uneven with like the second episode focuses a lot more on the Tuscan storyline than it does with Godfather Boba Fett.
Right.
And I think that's my biggest problem with a lot of these episodes is just the balance of things, because you especially when you get into episode 6 or episode 5, the balance is just way off. And like in episode 4, there's a moment where he's done with the back tanks, where you've caught up to the story that we know from Mandalorian.
You're finally healed.
Yeah, you're healed. And I was like, okay, now we can move forward with this actual story, and you're about to go to war with the Pikes. And then it does the 180 of here is the prologue to Mandalorian season 3.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is episode 4 ends with Fennec saying, "Hey, we need muscle. And we got money, and I know what to do with that money to get us muscle." And then we hear the Mandalorian theme playing as the credits roll, and you're like, oh snap, here we go. And I fully expected the opening sequence to the title card to be a "Where's Mando at now?" Episode 5. Then it kept on going, and it was a straight up, I mean, I saw defenders all over the internet saying, well, we needed to know what he was doing. Yeah, but we didn't need a whole hour to tell that. Nothing about that episode had anything to do with Boba until the last 30 seconds of it, when Fennec showed up.
Yeah. So I mentioned my friend Devin hasn't been watching the show. I told him, don't watch the first 4 episodes. Just jump in at episode 5, because you're going to do a science experiment for me. Because you don't need to see the rest of the show to get into that episode. It's Mandalorian season 3.
But you do need to see this show in order to watch Mandalorian season 3, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Can you imagine telling somebody, hey, before you watch the new season of this show, you need to watch episodes 4 or 5 and 6 of this other show, or this new show ain't gonna make any sense. It was very odd.
Well, I mean, it's not something that's new to Star Wars though, because especially at the end of Mandalorian season 1, when the Darksaber came out, you had people were like, "Wait, what is that?" And you had people, it's like go back and watch.
Thing.
Well, yeah, go back and watch. If you want to know, you have to go back and watch these episodes of the Clone Wars, these episodes of Rebels,
Sure.
and then you'll know. So that's not as weird to me, because especially with like the Marvel way of things now, like, oh, you don't know who that Black Widow is in Hawkeye? Go back and watch the Black Widow movie. Like. It's the thing now. Like, people are gonna have to I feel bad for people who aren't fully committed to this stuff, like I am, like who aren't gonna watch everything, because like you have to go back and like there are gonna be moments where you have to go back, like for like Doctor Strange 2, you might want to go watch WandaVision if you haven't. Like it's that kind of thing. So, and it's just weird. It's just so weird that they did it. But
it is weird, and it felt like they just got bored with the current story, and they were like, "Hey, let's throw in Mando, everybody's favorite character, and get you psyched for season." I mean, before we even talk about what happens in 5 and 6, if you were to take those episodes out of the show, there would feel like there's a whole act of this story missing. Because, I mean, they spent so much time on those flashbacks for it to ultimately mean nothing to the show.
Yeah.
It doesn't drive Boba. I get that they kind of introduced the villains in those backstories, but not really. And they kind of introduced what the villains are doing on the planet, but not really. And then all of a sudden, we're on to if you were to just watch 1 through 4 and then 7, you would be like, how did we get here? Where's all the build up to this? And also, what is Boba's motivations? He goes from, I want my ship back, to, oh no, I actually want to be in control of Jabba's palace, to, this is my city and these are my people to protect. And I don't know how we got there. Like, it never shows why these people need protection. It never shows anything about, like, them struggling. Every time we see the city, it seems to be doing well. They got an active casino. The only people that are struggling is this teenage mod gang that's stealing water from the town, but somehow they have the money for the shiniest, most colorful bikes on the planet and all these mods.
To be fair, those bikes are very slow.
I know. They clearly put all the money on the paint jobs and interiors.
It was like watching senior citizens race in their scooters at the mall. That was the weirdest chase scene that I feel like they meant to speed up in post, but then forgot.
And I think, and I don't know if it's true or not, but when I rewatched it with Maddie like weeks later, it almost felt like they went back and sped that scene up, because it does feel a little faster on second watch, but it still looks clunky as hell. Like, you can tell when it's sped up in post versus when it's filmed to look fast. Like, there are just people in any genre that can't film fast scenes. Like, I'll be watching a movie and I'm like, that car is clearly going 10 miles an hour. There's just no way this is a chase scene. Like, everybody is clearly driving slow. They're just speeding up the picture in post to make it look fast. Whereas you can be more dynamic with your filming to make it look like it's fast.
Yeah.
And this was just not filmed correctly at all, that chase scene. But again, just the idea that Boba has somehow risen to this heroic savior of the city. I never saw in this show what he was saving the city from. Like, I get spice was supposed to be the Star Wars version of drugs, but we never saw the effect on that on the the city. It's
Yeah.
more like an export than an import.
I think, and this is the best way I can describe it, I think it's to protect the city from a ruler like the Hutts, like a ruler who was like Jabba and ruthless and trying to be a different leader. I think that's what he was going for. But you don't really ever see anything
you
that.
don't see that.
Yeah, you don't get to see anything that Jabba did.
Like if he wanted to be like, look, I want to be a good ruler, and he said, this is what we're gonna do, Finnick. We're gonna come into town. We're gonna kill these other heads that have taken up, because clearly, Bid Fortuna wasn't Jabba, and he had to divide the city up. Now, instead of one evil dude ruling over the city, we've got 5 evil dudes ruling over the city. We're going to wipe out the heads, and then I'm going to be the new ruler, and I'm going to rule with respect, not with fear. We don't see that. We see him literally saying, hey, give me my money, treat me like you treated Jabba. I'm going to be different, but I'm going to work with these other crime lords, and I'm not going to change anything until the very last episode. And then all of a sudden he's like, no more spice, no more crime lords, no more everything.
Yeah.
What did he do? What did he do for the city other than bring war to their streets, get civilians killed in a bombing, and set his favorite pet off King Kong style on people's homes? And then people were bowing to him like he was their savior at the end. Like, I was literally expecting a scene where people said, hey, congrats on winning your fight. Please leave our town.
Yeah.
We don't want you here. You've done nothing but make things worse for us. Please leave. And that is clearly not what the show wanted me to feel. But there was nothing in the show that showed, oh, Boba is here to fix things. And without Boba, these people would have been worse off. And I really just think that's because we didn't have enough Boba in modern time. And part of that was because we had 2 episodes that had nothing to do with Boba. In fact, he didn't even have any lines. It's so crazy.
Well, in a way, that is the most pure Boba Fett that you can get. Like, he shows up but doesn't have any lines, doesn't do anything. Like that's pure Boba Fett. That's Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett.
I guess. That's what you want to tell me.
All right. I feel like we're going to spend a lot of time on episodes 5 and 6. So I want to bring up 2 things before we get into that. And it has to do with 2 of the characters that they brought in from other media and debuted in live action. The first being Black Chrysanthemum, the Wookiee bounty hunter gladiator, who were you familiar with him at all before the show?
No, but I did read up on him afterwards, and I was like, oh, this... After I saw him in episode 3, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was
episode 2.
Episode 2, when he walks out from behind the twins, I was like, okay, clearly this is a character from somewhere. And I did look him up, and he sounded like he had a pretty cool, backstory.
Yeah. I went hard into the Star Wars comics when Disney released like the new canon of comics. So I was familiar with him when he showed up. I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. So it was really cool to see him. They gave him a good bit to do. We'll get into the finale later. But then the live action debut of Cad Bane.
Hold up. Before we get into Cad Bane.
Yeah.
Do you feel like they neutered Black Chrysanthemum at all without even talking about the finale? I mean, when he walked out with that big ass rifle and he just I bombed Boba, and I was like, oh, that don't mess with this dude. But then when he shows up at Boba's house the next day, did I call him Baba before? When he shows up at Boba's house the next day, he's biting him. He's got these spiked electric brass knuckles. He's throwing Boba around. I don't know if that BAFTA tank makes Boba's skin like steel, but I was like, this is so neutered. I get this show's supposed to be family oriented, but they can't even show a scratch. Like, you're telling me this dude gets punched with brass spiked knuckles and nothing happens, and then a couple teenagers come in and beat Black Chrysanthemum? It kind of felt like a letdown.
That fight in the palace was probably the best action that he got. I don't think it was too neutered. It is weird that they don't show any scratches, considering like in episode 2 of Star Wars, like Padme gets her back scratched open by that monster thing in the arena.
Blood in the movies all the time.
Yeah.
Like, tell me a Wookiee bites you or punches you directly in the face with spiked knuckles, and you have nothing to show for it. That makes no sense to me.
Part of me wondered.
They didn't want to show any blood in this show, but it was weird.
I mean, part of it makes me wonder if it's because he just came out of a Bacta tank. Like, I don't know exactly how Bacta works, but I'm sure that if he still has some on him, it's gonna still have some side effects. Yeah, I mean, like, so, like, kind of like instantaneous healing, like.
It's weird. But yeah, Cad Bane. You mentioned Cad
yeah.
Bane.
So Cad Bane made his live action debut. Were you familiar with him from Clone Wars at all?
Yes, Clone Wars and Rebels. I loved his character. I thought he was really cool. And not to mention, so that episode, Cab Vanth came back as well. And funny enough, I was binging Justified because they've just announced that a new season of Justified was coming out. And literally the night before episode 4? Was that episode 4? No, that was episode 6. The night before episode 6 came out, I had finished the final season of Justified. So I went to bed with Timothy Olyphant, and then I woke up with Timothy Olyphant, and I was just like,
nice.
Yes. And when he turns and looks out at the desert and has a look of fear on his face, and you see that figure, I begged the screen for it to be Cad Bane. I was like, holy shit, if this is who I think it is, this is going to be amazing. And it was.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
What did you think of the look of Cad Bane?
I thought it was great. I know that it's different. However, you know, the times that we've seen him in the Clone Wars and Rebels are arguably years, you know, way before this point, so a person can develop. But
yeah,
talking about the animation to live action, I thought it was pretty like spot on. He looked great.
I did too, and people, like a lot of people on the internet, didn't like it. Like, go figure, Star Wars fans weren't happy about something in Star Wars on the internet. But the Clone Wars is so stylized. Like, you look at like Obi-Wan's beard and things like that. Like, Clone Wars characters are over stylized for that production. Like, that's not what Cad Bane would look like in real life. Like, he's not going to have as defined of features. And this is 30 years later, so like it makes sense that he's going to look a little bit different.
I took their criticism in the same vein of Ahsoka's tails aren't as long as they were in the series.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be some things that don't transfer well to on screen, but I thought Ahsoka looks like an older Ahsoka, and Cad Bane looks like a live action. I mean, Dave Filoni wasn't going to let a live action version of one of his characters not look the way he wanted it to look. And I thought, I thought he looked great, and I thought he sounded great. The voice acting was fantastic. I mean, that was a chilling scene, the standoff between him and Vanth. I thought that was a great introduction to a great character.
And I think, like, I'm happy for Dave Filoni that he got to direct the episode that character got to come into.
Yeah, it felt great. I am like, I want to save the finale talk to after we talk about 5 and 6.
Yeah.
But look, you know, when Mando came out, everybody was like, all right, we're leaning more towards the Western of Star Wars. And there's always been a Western-esque feel to Star Wars. Then there's so much more about Star Wars that isn't that Western motif. And Cad Bane is as Western as you get. He's got the hat. He's got everything but the spurs on his boots, you know. So I really liked that. But now that we've reached, like, peak Western to the point where it was pretty much the Star Wars version of Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Like, they had the you know, the standoffs and everything, the quick draws. I'd be okay if we had less Western stuff going forward. Like, not all of Star Wars has to be a Western, but damn, they got the Western part of that down in that scene. That was great.
Yeah, I love the Western aspect of that too. All right, let's get into the Mandalorian season 3 prologue. Because there's a lot to unpack there. So you pick up with Mando with the Darksaber on a job. Like, he's just doing his thing with a lightsaber.
Yeah, he goes into some like fish factory or whatever, and he's collecting. He's back to his bounty, you know.
Yeah.
And there's that line: "I bring you in warm, I bring you in cold." I'm like, I didn't know how much I missed this. You know, this is great.
Yeah.
And he was ruthless. It was the most ruthless action we've gotten in the whole show. He was just like, you know, the room, like, gang jumped him, and he took out that saber. And at first I was like, okay, why is the fight choreography kind of weird with this saber? Like, it feels like kind of weird. And then we got the reason why. Like, this saber isn't like he's just got a sword. Like, it's a lot more than that. And I like that story element, that you might have that saber, but that doesn't mean you're suddenly gonna be like this badass, you know, saber wielding guy. Like, it takes a lot more work than just holding it in your hand.
Yeah, and I think it's always interesting to like, I enjoyed the Sabine Wren storyline on Rebels, where she's learning to use the Darksaber because she's not one with the Force. Like, it's interesting to see non-Force users use a lightsaber. So I'm curious to see how he goes with it going forward.
Well, and again, it retroactively fixes what some might consider plot holes in Star Wars canon, because in the original Star Wars movies, George Lucas was very prominently known for saying, no, you have to hold the lightsaber with two hands. And then the more we got into the more fantastic lightsaber battles, you started seeing one-handed stuff. And so now it kind of seems like the answer to that is it's a mind over matter type thing. And if you're just trying to fight against the saber, then it's going to get heavier and you're going to need both hands. And then it's going to get so heavy that even both hands ain't going to work. But if you're in the right mindset, and almost, I don't know if it's a force only type thing, but it seems like if you're in the right mindset, it's lighter to hold, and then you might be able to do one-handed.
Yeah. I don't know the specifics at all that much. So we got a bit of backstory with Mandalore and the Darksaber that is I feel like going to play a big part in
Sure.
season 3 of the Mandalorian. You got to see the armorer again. Do you have anything about that segment of the episode to talk about?
I just liked seeing that they were still around somewhere.
Yeah.
It was, okay, what are they doing? You know, they clearly didn't stick around. It was nice to see that she was alive and that she had like one lieutenant. The Halo ring that they were on was a neat set piece. I was like, that's cool. We're finally seeing something different. I've always said, gosh, Star Wars is such a small universe. We only see Tatooine and like 3 other places. Yeah. This was finally a new set, and it was kind of cool. Seeing that crew, and then seeing him immediately get challenged for that saber was interesting. And then we got Mando reaping the consequences of his actions. Such a powerful moment from Mando season 2 was when he took off his helmet. Mm-hmm. And again, this kind of leads into those rumors. I don't think he's ever taking off his helmet anymore, because he gets chastised in this episode. He gets asked straight out, have you ever taken off your helmet? And he says yes, begrudgingly. And she says, well, then you're no longer a Mandalorian. And instead of him saying, well, forget you, I know plenty of other Mandos that take their helmets off all the time. I'll just go join their crew. Instead, he begs, how can I make this right? And she tells him, and that's clearly what season 3 is going to be about. So I can't ever see him taking off his helmet again after that.
I can. I think eventually, the more that he interacts with, like, I don't trust the armorer. I don't either. I think there's, like, I wouldn't be surprised if she took off her helmet. It was Darth Maul underneath there. But like, I think the journey of his journey going forward is going to be between, like, being torn between the Darksaber side, like the armor side of the Mandalore culture, and then the what's her name? Katie Sackhoff, Bo-Katan side of things, where they're taking off their helmets. I think he's gonna learn. I think he's gonna learn more from them, and like from Boba. Like, I think the fact that everyone's questioning like why he's on this path, I think he's gonna start questioning it himself, and learn stuff about what the armorers do. Like, I think he's gonna learn more about like the Death Watch side of things. And I think that's where this sect comes from. And I think
because they were on the moon, they weren't on Mandalore, and yeah, I would love for Bo-Katan to have, you know, we heard the armorer's version of Bo-Katan and who she is.
Yeah,
I would love to hear Bo-Katan's version of who the armorer is and what that sect really is, and how they were extremists back when Mandalore was in its prime, let alone now.
Yeah.
Why are you treating them like they're the way when clearly, when Mandalore was in its prime, that was not the way. You know?
Yeah. And then you go back to Tatooine. And get,
like, we got to get back there. Familiar territory.
Yeah. Amy Sedaris comes in, and I learned way more about Amy Sedaris' character and her relationship with Jawas than I ever wanted to. But let's talk a bit about the replacement for the Razor Crest.
This was, like many choices in this show, to me, clearly toy motivated. Like, we need another toy. I mean, I saw that and I was like, oh, this is gonna be cool. But it was like, that doesn't make sense for who is he no longer gonna be a bounty hunter? Like, he lived off the Razor Crest, you know. He collected his bounties off the Razor Crest. There's how is he going to do that in this ship? This ship feels like when you see an RV towing a Corvette. It's when the RV stops, then they take the Corvette to go to the store or whatever, but they don't camp in the Corvette, they camp in the RV.
Yeah.
It feels like he was giving up his home for a sports car. It doesn't make sense.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
For his job.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I can see the toy aspect of it, and I think that's a lot of what Star Wars does. Like Baby Yoda also feels like that as well.
Oh, for sure.
But the 8-year-old in me who remembers going to see Phantom Menace and seeing the Naboo starfighter on the big screen, like seeing that come back into play in such a cool way, and like seeing it fly through Beggar's Canyon, through the old pod racing track, I was like, oh, this is special.
The gate still broken on the ground from Anakin's mishap. It was a great scene. I appreciate it. It gave me like, oh, I remember going to see that on the big screen. That was cool back then, and it's cool now.
Yeah.
And the it did look cool as soon as she like gouged out the asteroid the droid little housing thing and put a little miniature bubble on there. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
there's only one person that's for.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not for a bounty.
No, it's not for a bounty.
There's no question who's gonna fill that seat.
So,
But we did get a BD unit. Did you see that BD?
yes, I
from,
did see BD unit. Yeah.
All in Order.
Do you
I love that. That
do
was
you
great.
think that was Cal's BD unit, or?
I mean, I think that there's got to be more than one BD
Yeah.
unit in Star Wars. I don't like having to force everything like there's only 5 people in the universe and everything's connected to those 5 people.
Yeah.
So I would hope not, but it looked clean.
Like,
and I was like, I would love to see Cal in live action, and now we can have realistically looking BD unit.
yeah, there were people who were saying that, oh my God, that's Anakin's Naboo starfighter, like the one he flew. Like, no, it's not. Like, wishful thinking. The symbols are different. Like, that's not the same one.
Right.
Did you notice like the big staff thing that they had to put in the ship is the same thing that they used to brace the trash compactor in Star Wars?
I did notice that.
Yeah.
Like little things like that are kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's overkill. Like, like Han Solo and the origin of the dice, like I don't care. I do not care. You spent way too much time on the movie with that. Like it was not important to me. It's not important to me now. But little things like this to where they're not literally taking a minute to look at the camera and wink is fun. I do like those type of things more because I'm like, oh, I do kind of recognize that. That's neat.
I also just enjoy any episode that Bryce Dallas Howard directs, evidently, because I enjoyed both of her episodes.
Getting better.
Her episodes, I agree with the internet. Give her a movie, like give her a Star Wars film.
She's more than proven herself. In fact, I like her episodes more than her dad's episode, or her dad's rendition of Han Solo. Granted, that wasn't entirely his movie.
Yeah, that.
But I think she's had better reception. I think she's done great. And,
yeah.
And again, no disrespect to Robert Rodriguez. He has his niche. I like a lot of his movies. I like a lot of his Grindhouse stuff. His Spy Kids stuff definitely are made for a certain audience. But there was a tonal difference. There was a talent difference. There was such a stark difference between episodes 1 through 4 and 5. 5 felt like a completely different show. Not only did it have more money, it had better writing. It made crazy good use of its time. It still had filler. I think the working on the ship took a lot longer than it needed to take, but they were running out that runtime a bit. But it just felt like a tighter episode.
Yeah.
And then the way it ended, with Fennec coming in saying, hey, we need you for a job, and him saying, I'll do it on the house. I just have to go see my friend first. I was like, okay, one of two things are going to happen. Either episode 6 is going to again be a Mando episode and not a Boba episode, but that would be crazy because this is the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
So either that's going to happen or that's going to be season 3, and we're just going to get Boba saying, hey, I did what I needed to do. I'm back now, and we're going to see what he did in season 3 of Mando. Nope. We got it in episode 6.
Yeah.
It was another Mando-centric episode.
I will say episode 6 did try to balance it out a little bit more with the Tatooine storyline with Cobb Vanth and Cad Bane. But yeah, as soon as he said, I'm going to go see my little friends, like, we're going to see Grogu next week. Like, that's what's going to happen. Which I thought season 3 of Mandalorian was going to be them reuniting. I didn't think it was going to happen beforehand.
Certainly didn't think it was going to happen in the first half. Like, well, first, before we get into the implications of the episode, just seeing the planet, seeing Luke start to build his school, seeing Luke in the daylight looking loads better than he did in the finale of Mando. I mean, even in Mando, he looked better than the deep fakes in the movies because those just sucked.
Yeah.
That Luke Leia training sequence when they took off their masks, I was like, huh, what PS2 screen grab did you take this from? But I loved how on my podcast, Nerf Herders Assemble, Seth and I watched this video on YouTube right after that episode of The Mandalorian came out, where this guy was like, no offense to Star Wars, I could do that scene better, and he did. He like fixed.
Yeah.
And then Disney was like, hire that guy, and they did, and Luke was. There was still some uncanny valley moments, but it looked loads better, and I really appreciated that. It looked great. I loved those scenes with Luke and Grogu.
I love those scenes. I was expecting those scenes from the get-go of the episode. Like, okay, Mando's gonna go find Grogu. He might not see Grogu this episode, but we're gonna see him. I was not expecting Ahsoka to show up.
I know, and I think that was probably more fan service than anything. I think it was just like, Dave Filoni's going to direct the episode. He's going to throw all the Dave Filoni stuff he can throw into that episode.
Honestly, I think it's less fan service than establishing that Ahsoka and Luke know each other, because we're going to get into this Ahsoka show here soon. I don't know. I think it's next year at this point. I think it's important to establish it. They are aware of each other. They know each other. Like, it would have been nice to see their first meeting. And we still might. Like, I don't know what the Ahsoka show's timeline is going to be, but
while I'm hoping Ahsoka's isn't the same format of Book of Boba, where it's flashbacks and then modern storyline. I hope it's more forward movement. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed we didn't get that. But again, this isn't the show where that would have made sense to have.
Yeah.
But it was cool. It was cool to see them talking, and and then just the little things like, you are a lot like your dad and stuff like that. I was like, I want more of it. I know this doesn't belong at all in the Book of Boba Fett show.
That was
cool.
that was the hardest part of these two episodes. Like, I know this doesn't make sense narratively. And I don't understand what they're doing, but I love every second of it. Like, this is phenomenal. Like, this is Star Wars. Like, you get to see Luke Skywalker. Like,
you knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were setting it up for the next show. It was that old school Marvel technique of throwing in scenes that have nothing to do with the current movie, but is setting up a future movie coming out. And this was, I don't care what you tell me, this was so much less about the Book of Boba. I had people saying, well, it's called the Book of Boba Fett. That means there could be chapters that don't have Boba in them. Well, yeah, but you would think they'd still have to do with the plot. This was 99% set up for Mando Season 3, and then with sprinkles of stuff that has to do with this show. And we did get the Cobb Vanth scenes, which was great. It didn't make a lot of sense. Like, why were those Pikes just randomly stopping in Vanth's territory to take out their money and their spice? Like, it wasn't like there were two ships. It wasn't like they were trading with somebody. They were literally just looking at their stuff, and Cobb was like, hey, don't do that around here.
Yeah.
Like, okay, just get back in your car and go away. Like, why do you gotta fight him? Not like they were mining in the town or something.
No.
Like that. They literally just stopped their car.
Like, just get your drugs out of here. We don't want them.
Right. But then we go back to that town later when Mando's like, hey, we worked well together taking down that dragon. We could use some of your, good fighters for this. And I realize you don't owe me anything, but if you're willing, we'd appreciate it. And, he left, apparently flew over and saw this menacing figure walking out of the desert and was like, Vance got this. Let him take care of it.
The most awkward things happen in starships in these shows. Like, there was a moment where Slave One flew past Luke Skywalker's X-Wing in the Mando Season 2 finale, and they just kind of looked at each other like that meme from Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, so
Cad...
by the way...
Yeah.
We real quick, backing up a little bit. After Slave One guns down that biker gang, which was a cool scene, he goes back to the Sarlacc pit. I still don't think that made sense. I think it could have been better with, I'm just gonna bomb this Sarlacc pit. But I do love how the Sarlacc, which either Mando and what's his face are like strong as hell because, or not Mando, Han Solo, because Han Solo had like the Sarlacc was wrapped around his leg and he was like actively like pulling against it, but that same Sarlacc was pulling down all of Slave One.
Yeah.
Like, is Han Solo superhuman or something? How was he able to do
it was Lando. Lando had it wrapped around his leg.
Was it? Oh yeah, that's right.
'Cause
Solo was above and
had to shoot him blind. Yeah.
But they were holding back the Sarlacc, and Sarlacc's actively pulling down the whole ship. And, maybe it just got stronger.
I mean, Boba not knowing what happened to his armor kind of makes sense to me because he's kind of out of it when he comes out of the pit, and like he's not awake when the Jawas take it, so he might think that he took it off in the Sarlacc.
I don't know. I thought it was. I don't know.
That's how I took it.
Either way, we saw it, so I was the whole time. I'm like, it's not down there, dude. Just stop. It's not down there. But, sorry. Going back to Cad Bane, you had something more to say about that?
Not really. Like, I think it was an amazing introduction. I just wish that they had Cad Bane been the one who slaughtered the Tuscans. Like Boba's Tuscans, instead of just having the Pikes do it and blame the gang. I wish it was Cad Bane who did that, because I think that would have made their standoff in the finale that much. They would have made that storyline a little bit more worth it than it kind of was.
Well, and again, like when they introduced Cad Bane here, I was like, okay, he's gonna be like the main villain in season 2. We're gonna get more Boba versus him, because if you've seen other media, you know that Boba and he has a history. If you haven't seen other media, you have no idea who this is. Mm-hmm. And so when he's back immediately in the finale, I'm like, all right, they're setting him up to be like the main adversary of the next season, because he's doing the business of the Pikes. I still thought I liked seeing the Pikes in this show because I thought they were cool in the Clone Wars. I still think they're underutilized in this show. Like, if they're supposed to be the primary bad guys, they don't get enough screen time. Like, they're very much to the side. And then they bring in Cad Bane to be their representative, and I'm more interested in Cad Bane than they are. So I think the writing didn't do the Pikes a good service. But immediately we get that well, first of all, the casino gets bombed in episode 6. And that was pretty wild. I was kind of sad because I really liked Jennifer Beals' character.
I did too.
I thought she was great. I wanted more of her.
Yeah. So did the internet. They started calling her Space Mommy. But
I liked her. I thought those scenes were pointless. It was always like Boba walks in, says something, and walks out. But she was always great in those scenes.
I loved her scene with Black Chrysanthemum. Like, that was my favorite scene with her, where she like kind of talks him down, but then he's like, nah, I'm gonna rip this guy's arms off.
And if you know who Black Chrysanthemum is and you've seen the other media, you know why. This show didn't do a good job of explaining why, but there's a reason why he attacked those guys specifically, and their race and what they've done to his family, to him, and there's a lot of backstory with that scene.
Yeah, I do like that when the club blew up, they made a very good point to show that Max Rebo was not with the band when it blew up.
Like, they went out of their way to show you.
Yeah,
that. Like, we're not done milking this character, guys.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who's seen the Lego Star Wars holiday special knows Max Rebo's in that, so he couldn't have died in Boba Fett. Yeah, I was surprised that they blew that up. Like, I didn't know what that scene was going to be. I was not expecting that explosion.
Yeah. Well, the longer it went on, I was like, oh, this kind of feels like this is what's going to happen. And then the droid, and I'm like, oh, snap, here we go. And I was just waiting for them to immediately reverse it. Like, the opening scene of the next episode would have been like Jennifer Beals, like, carrying somebody out, and they're all just kind of slightly charred, but that was it. I did not expect them to go, oh, no, they actually did kill everybody in there. And then I was like, okay, good on you for at least holding to that. But then the writing goes back down the crapper for me, because we get this great scene of Finnick saying, we've divided our forces. Black Chrysanthemum's over here. The speed biker mod kids are over here. The
Gamorreans
Bacon brothers are over here. And we're here. And there's nobody that can walk up on us. And then literally someone immediately walks up on them, and it's Cad Bane. And you get this standoff with Cad Bane and Boba. And again, if you've seen other media, you're like, this is a big moment. They have history. If you haven't, this doesn't feel like a big moment at all. I mean, it makes more sense that Mando would be out there because he killed Vanth. And there's even a moment when Boba's like, he killed Vanth. And I was like, have you even met Vanth? Like, I don't think Boba's even met Vanth. If he did, it was off screen. Why does he care?
I think he was aware of Vanth because he was watching from afar when Mando got his armor. So he knew who had his armor. So he's aware who Vanth was.
But he said something like he killed Vanth, like he killed my friend.
Yeah.
And it was like, was he your?
He killed an ally. Like, that was an ally that he had on his side. Somebody who his trust in Mando meant he could trust Vanth, and then that trust was like, that was one down for the team. So
then Cad twists the dagger a little bit and reveals who truly killed Boba's Tuscan family, and you see it affect Boba slightly in that scene, but then there's never like a "you killed my family" type redemption vengeance moment for Boba later. It's like never brought up again, and I was like, what's the point of showing us that family if we're not going to see the resolution?
Yeah,
it just felt like it felt missing.
Like, Fennec gets the revenge on the Pikes and the leadership there, and like it would have been more satisfying to see Boba go in and kill them all like that.
Right.
Instead, you just get Boba like in like every standoff that he can get into, like just hiding for cover while she's off trying to find the leadership.
I mean, again, it was like they were pounding it home that Boba's no longer a killer. He wants to be a ruler.
Yeah.
He's no longer a killer. And yes, he does. There is a moment where he brings out the knee rockets and goes after a couple Pikes, and he does this weird, like, gun one way and knee going the other way thing. But yeah, they go out of his way to show, hey, Finnick, you go assassinate these bad guys. I'll protect the people here.
Mm-hmm.
I will give him credit. He did say, let's retreat to the palace at one point, and the mod teams are like, no, this is our town. We got to stay here. And I was like, but why? Like, you've already got civilians killed. These people aren't coming after. Like, the Pikes aren't coming after the people. They're coming after you. It would be safer for everybody else if you, just like the Superman a Zod fight. It would have been better if you took it out of the city, not kept it in the city, but nope.
Into the desert,
Mod teams want to keep it in the city, and then they all get jumped. Immediately, like we all expected them to. And surprisingly, only the Bacon brothers died. Like, nobody else died. And Black Chrysanthemum gets jumped on by all those lizard dudes. Conveniently, none of them had their swords when they jumped on him. They just took them out when they were running towards him. I was like, points of the finale that I liked, but the choreography and the strategy of the whole thing just got more and more on my nerves.
Yeah, and then you have Amy Sedaris show up, like, in the middle of this chase scene in a wagon, and she's like, "I got someone here to see you," and it's like that was such a weird way to reintroduce Mando to Grogu, like to reunite them. Like it worked, but it was just so weird. Like in the middle of all of this, like that's put a child in danger, like
because they wanted Grogu to be a part of the fight, and he did not need to be. He didn't need to be the one to ease the Rancor, because we had already established that the Rancor had a bond with Boba. Boba could have just came back and calmed them back down. He does a little force powers with one of the robots that wasn't like all too vital to the fight. This wasn't necessary to throw Grogu into that mix, because there was so much else going on. And every time they cut back to what else was going on, it was just that much lackluster. Like, we get these giant mech droids that were like bigger versions of the roly-polies from the prequels. I was like, oh, this is cool. But then they're worthless. Like, they can't shoot. There's a scene where there's 30 people running down a 2-lane street in like 10 feet in front of these guys. They can't shoot anything. And then the people just like, let's just keep shooting at them for some reason. It's not like there's a health bar that says eventually these shields will give up. They just keep on shooting. And then the girl from Yellow Jackets is like, I'm going to go up there in sniper position. And the other girl goes with her. And they snipe 2 guys. And it's like, keep doing that. They don't see you. And she's like, I'm going to tell the droids that we're up here. And shoots at the droid. And the droid immediately looks up and shoots out their sniper position. And then they get themselves cornered. And I'm like, there's just no strategy to this war at all. They're just running with their heads cut off. It was just lackluster.
The biggest complaint I've seen about the finale and the choreography is the one biker kid does a spin before he shoots, and it's all flare, and everyone's like, "Why is he spinning like that?" Like, have you seen Star Wars? Like, that's all they do. Everyone spins. Palpatine did it. Anakin and Obi-Wan did it. Spinning's a cool trick. Is an actual line in Star Wars. It's gonna happen. Like, that's just something that happens in Star Wars. Like that's a silly thing to get upset about in Star Wars. But
I think it was very convenient that they were outgunned and outmatched, but outside of the Bacon brothers, nobody dies. Like, literally, Black Chrysanthemum gets dogpiled, he's fine. He gets shot several times, he's fine.
I think a few of the bikers died.
Did they?
Okay. Not the main two.
There's people literally like point blank range in front of these droids, and the droids either don't fire or they try to step on them for some reason, or they do fire, and it's always those conveniently right behind you. Like, they can't aim up a foot and just shoot you in the back. It was like it was like, oh yeah, this is a Spy Kids guy. This is a children's show. No one's gonna get shot when they're running away. That doesn't make any sense. And then they do bring in the Rancor. That line from Danny Trejo of "this is gonna take a lot of work and a lot of discipline" apparently happened all off screen, and Boba comes in with his pet Rancor and wrecks house, and it was cool, but it was just like, I could just see Robert Rodriguez off screen with his toys, just like, and they're gonna go like this and put that on screen, and yeah.
It was brought up in our Victims and Villains writers chat that, like, someone noticed, I forget who it was, so I don't want to say the wrong name. Somebody noticed, like, is it just me, or did Boba get his rocket back at one point in the finale? I'm like, no, he went back to the castle. Like, he had to go get the Rancor, so he just reloaded. Like, it's that simple. And they're like, oh,
I have
okay.
seen that argument several times for some reason. But then other people were like, why didn't he just come back with Slave One? Like
that too.
Why not just? It's because because we need the pop figure of Boba riding the Rancor, and we were introduced to Boba riding a dinosaur. We're not gonna say, oh, you could ride a Rancor and not have him ride a Rancor. But had Slave One come in, I'm pretty sure he could have cleaned house and just been fine.
I mean, one of those sonic bombs would have taken out the whole town, and I don't think that's what he was going for. But that sound effect, the brrr, like, I would have been there for it.
He could have just stick with the guns. The guns would have been fine. He could have shot up the place or the Pikes would have been like, all right, we give up.
Yeah.
But no, and then how? I guess either Rancors can run real fast or Jabba's palace ain't that far from town, because he got back real quick with the Rancor. But he did his thing, and then we had that Cad Bane came right back out and whooped Boba's ass. I mean, it was like, I still got you. Boba's like, hey, I'm not a boy anymore. Clearly referencing history that a lot of people probably don't know about. But he says, but I do have armor. And Cad Bane's like, your armor don't mean shit. And he quick drawed him and took him down. And I was like, okay, this is, I literally in the moment was predicting Boba Fett's going to get the upper hand. Just like this show has been saying, he's not going to kill Cad Bane. He's going to beat him, and he's going to say, no, get the hell off my planet. And then Cad Bane's going to come back as this adversary in the next episode. But then, no, he kills Cad Bane. Like, Cad Bane literally looks up at him and says, I always knew you were a killer. And instead of saying, no, as the show has implied, I have grown to this other thing, he does. Or it's implied that he does. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess he's a killer now? Again? It just felt weird. Like, it felt like the show was not going in that direction, but he did it anyway.
It was for me, it was a bit like the end of Batman Begins. I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you either. Like, it was like, I'm only doing this because I have to. But there's also been some debate on it. I mean, there's also been debate if Cad Bane's actually dead, because one of his lights on his bodysuit starts lighting up after he's stabbed. So with all of the modifications,
I would be more than happy if that's what happens. If they reveal like, oh yeah, just because he's kind of humanoid doesn't mean that's where his heart is, and he had mods just like everybody else, and he's fine. But they kind of went out of their way to like suggest that he's dead, and I just found that lackluster. I was like, it doesn't make sense for what you've been trying to say is the new Boba, and it was just kind of like, and then he, again, like it would have made more sense had Cad Bane gunned down the Tuscan family, and that's what drove Boba to kill him. Like, I would show you mercy, but you killed, something that was a big part of my life, so I'm gonna kill you. But no, like it was just like it was building off something that wasn't on screen for this show.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel as monumental as I think they wanted it to feel.
Yeah.
It just felt like they introduced this really cool character only to kill him off in the next episode, supposedly.
I don't think this is the last we'll see him in live action, because we have so many other shows that are taking place before this. Before even episode 4 of Star Wars. Because I'm sure Cad Bane will show up in Andor or Kenobi.
I hope so. He's too good of a character to let go. They did so well with him, and the internet blew up. And people that knew who he was like, hell yes. And people that didn't know who he was like, okay, this guy is menacing. I want more of him. So I certainly hope that's not the last time we see him.
Yeah, same here.
But then we see, the next day, Mando walking through the street, and he's getting like gifts from people, and people are bowing to him and thanking him. And again, I was just like, what has he earned? What has he done to earn this? Even he says, we're not suited for this. And I'm like, the hell yes you aren't. You've done nothing but bad things for this town. If anything, Finnick should be the one running things. She's the one that went off and killed the mayor and killed the Pikes. She did your dirty work. She should be the one on top. You should be her second. you should say, I'm not suited for this. Fennec, you should take my spot. If you want me to stick around, I will. Otherwise, I'll take Slave One and go somewhere else. And Tales of Star Wars continue.
Yeah. I'm inclined to think that they are setting this up for a second season, because I don't think the Rangers of the New Republic show is going forward anymore, considering everything that happened with Cara Dune's actress in Star Wars and like that breakup. So I'm curious if they're going to greenlight another season of this. I'm surprised they didn't already announce it, because they've seemed to be pretty quick with those announcements when it comes to these shows, at least. But
well, I mean, but again, it didn't even end with Boba. It ended
didn't.
with a tease for Mando season 3. So that's clearly what they're concerned about. They ain't even teased. There's no cliffhanger of, will we see Mando again? What's next for Mando? Nope. What's next for Boba? It was, what's next for Mando? And let's get into that show. Forget about the show. Let's get back to the main, show.
Well, I mean, there is the post-credit scene.
I mean, yeah, but that, again, is not really about Boba. It was like, oh, thank God Vance's not dead.
I mean, I think that's going to play more into Boba's storyline than it will Mando's.
Hopefully.
So I think
they'll team up.
Yeah, I think that's where
Maybe he'll be the new mayor or something, because he did kind of make like a planetary statement when he said, "You're not running spice through this planet anymore." That was loads more above his little town. So
yeah,
he's gonna replace the mayor or something.
Maybe
like
that'd be great. I'm curious what it's gonna look like now that Justified is coming back. What his schedule will allow. But
well, I think that's gonna be a very mini series, kind of like Dexter's Return. So. But yeah, any gunslinger role for Timothy Olyphant, I'm down for. He's great. He's a great addition to this. He definitely brings credence to the Western motif, and so yeah, I like it.
I think the Stephen Root cameo would have been a lot better if he was upset that the biker gang stole his stapler.
I know. Yeah. Even when he showed up, Maddie was like, "Oh, it's him."
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah.
Dang it, Bill. Like, any final thoughts on Book of Boba Fett?
So one of the things that I've just and granted this is Twitter, which is usually more toxic than productive, but one of the things I did see trending was keep Robert Rodriguez away from Star Wars. So my question to you is, if they did do a season 2, would you want him as the showrunner, or would you want somebody else? Because while he isn't credited as the lead writer, the showrunner is part of the creative process, is part of the writing process, is part of the characters. There was Robert Rodriguez like vibes throughout this whole show. If they do greenlight a season 2, would you like to see him come back, or would you like to see it in someone else's hands?
I would hope that if they did a season 2 with him, he would take some of the criticism that the show is getting and take that to heart and give focus in on Boba Fett. Like that, I think that if you focus in on what you can do with that character and try not to get too distracted by anyone else, I think as a showrunner, he'd be able to do it, because he's shown he knows how to use Boba Fett for action in his episode of Mando. So I would hope that he would learn from this experience and expand and adapt a little bit more to what the audience wants from Boba Fett.
I would think when I was on, I like to do these nice little graphics for my other podcast, Nerf Herders Assemble, and when I did our spoiler graphic, I used that poster of Boba on the throne, and I injected a How to Be a Crime Lord for Dummies book on. He was holding it. I think I think the writing really dumbed him down, and I think going forward, either season 2 would have to be like so much retconning this season, like fixing him, like working on making him more strategic. And I almost think that might be boring as well. I think maybe the answer is we just get Boba in small doses going forward. Like instead of dedicating a whole nother show to him, we just get him showing up now and then as a badass, and that kind of redeems his character. Small doses sometimes is the best for characters that are typically stoic and typically like what he used to be. Maybe that's why he came off as dumb, because he just had so much more screen time than we're used to a character like his given, and it didn't work, or at least didn't work for me. I don't know. I think small doses might be better for Boba.
Okay.
I want to see more of him. I mean, the actor, I always mess up his
Tamara Morrison.
Yeah, I love him. I might not like the show, but I love him on screen. I think he's a great a person, and I think he's a great actor, and I want to see more of him. I'm glad like I love seeing like little not TikToks, but little videos of him on the internet just like enjoying life, and I'm like, good for you, man. Like you just seem like a cool dude. And
have you listened
have
you listened to his album?
No, I heard he had one, but
it's pretty good. It's like easy listening covers. Like he does a Uncle Cracker cover, and it's really good. I would check it out. My favorite thing that I seen of him promoting the show on the internet was him talking. Him and Ming-Na Wen were taking a "What color would your lightsaber be?" quiz, and she got purple, and he's like, "Oh, I hate the purple ones. I don't like purple lightsabers." Bad things happen when I'm around those.
Yeah. That would be a thing. I would wonder if there was a season 2, if we'd get more of that flashback of him as a kid. Like, again, I was like, is this leading to something? And had there not been 2 Mando episodes in the middle of the season, they could have made that into something. I really do feel like if this were an actual book, they took out like 5 chapters of the Book of Boba and grabbed 5 chapters from the Mando book and put it in there, but then we're missing 5 chapters of the Book of Boba. Like, it felt like they could have fleshed that out or shown us why we kept on seeing that instead of just filler.
So one of the things Tamara Morrison has been saying about Boba Fett and his journey is that he's still angry because he never got his revenge on Mace Windu. And that's led to some speculation that season 2 would be Boba versus Mace Windu, because George Lucas had said at one point, "Oh, we never saw Mace Windu dead." So how would you feel if season 2 was Boba versus Mace Windu?
I mean, I would be intrigued. I would love to see Samuel L. Jackson back in Star Wars. I think we'd have to have some background on how he's back. Which again, if this was a Tales of Star Wars type thing versus a Boba show, then yeah, you could have a whole episode just dedicated to Mace Windu, and nobody would be like, "Where's Boba?" in the Boba Fett show.
Yeah,
that could be great. I don't think it would work for peacekeeper ruler Boba. I think if Boba decided to go off on his own and then had a bad day and then happened to see that guy, Mace Windu, is still alive, then maybe he's like, you know what? I never did get that revenge. But the character that we've been shown now isn't a character that to me would go seek out that revenge. He's clearly I want to sit on my throne and I want to take care of my people. I don't know how they're his people, but that's who he is now.
I feel like the show, like going forward, it's gonna be like a TLC type show of like rebuilding Tatooine and changing it from what it's meant to be. Because there was a lot of mention about like how it used to have oceans and all this water. Like I feel like they might be going that route with Tatooine. Like maybe event like him and Cobb Vanth team up to not only rid the planet of crime, but actually get it back to how it used to be millennia ago. Because there was a lot of talk about water in Tatooine. So
there was a lot of Dune talk in general. I mean, we've always known that the original Star Wars was heavily influenced by Dune.
Mm-hmm.
George Lucas was heavily inspired by Frank Herbert and Dune when he wrote Star Wars. Geez, everything from the spice to the Fremen like Tuscans to, I mean, there was so much Dune reference. The Dune Sea. I was like, oh my, you like just chill a little bit on the Dune references. But oh my gosh, like I've said this so many times with the movies, with Mando, there are more planets in Star Wars than Tatooine. We don't have to live on Tatooine for and guess what? Guess where Obi-Wan's show is going to be based on?
Well,
Tatooine.
If
it's not, I'll be surprised.
From what I heard, that's where it starts.
Okay, that'd be fine by me.
Yeah.
Inject some non-Tatooine in this Tatooine-based stuff.
I mean, we know Vader's in the show, and you know he's not going back to Tatooine because he hates sand. So,
yeah, it's just like Tatooine has just blown up so much. Like they just keep going back to it, and I'm like, guys, it's not that interesting. Like,
I mean, if you need to bury a lightsaber,
I guess
it's kind of a good place to hide them. So,
yeah. But the Spice thing and the Pikes thing, I think it just fell flat. I liked seeing the Pikes in live action, but like they never showed me how this was hurting the people. It felt, even Fennec, when Boba said Spice is no longer going to be an export on this planet, even Fennec was like, wait, no, that's how you make your money, Boba. Like you can't say that. That's our major export. It was never presented as something that was preying on the people of the planet. It was presented as something that was exported from the planet, and the Pikes were just reaping the benefits instead of anybody else all of a sudden.
yeah.
It felt, I think, whether or not they bring back Robert Rodriguez, I think just better writers need to happen, and maybe they'll have some time. It just felt overall like this was rushed. This was rushed so that they could get something in before Mando Season 3, because all these other shows, Ahsoka, the Andor show, and then the other ones that have been announced or teased, they're so far out. They needed something here, and they put this together really fast. And I feel like it felt like they put it together really fast.
Yeah, I'm surprised Kenobi's coming out before Andor. Honestly, I thought
me too, because they had to rewrite that thing from scratch.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's just COVID producing delays for Andor as well, where Obi-Wan already had those delays built into their schedule, because they were filming at the same time. So,
there's one other question I wanted to ask.
Yes.
I want to talk about the implications of Grogu coming back. There's a lot of people saying, with him back already, like we're literally going to start Mando Season 3 with him back. Does that undo basically the whole point of Season 2, and especially the powerful finale of Season... Like, the whole Season 2 was Mando's going to get him back to his people. That was memorialized by this amazing finale with him handing him off to Luke and taking off his helmet, looking into him, for that to just be immediately undone. And now the first episode of Season 3 is they're back together again. Like, should that have happened as quickly? Does that just cancel out the importance of Season 2?
I don't think so, because I think there's a lot more there going on than Grogu just deciding to go back to Mando. I don't think, if you look at Luke Skywalker as a character, him saying that you cannot have attachments is not Luke Skywalker. This is the Luke Skywalker who left Dagobah, left his training to go save his friends because they were in danger. I think, and I'm not this is not my original thought. This is from Fat Man Beyond podcast. The one guy who runs the Scum and Villainy Cantina in LA brought this up. Luke, like his theory was Luke wanted Grogu to go back to Mando, because that's what Luke did. Like he went to his attachments, and I think there's some validity there. There's a poster that Star Wars released for, I think it was Comic-Con. It's a poster of Grogu and Luke. And Luke's in his like white robes that you see him in the end of Force Awakens, holding holding a yellow kyber crystal. I don't like that's official Star Wars art. I think that's going to come into play at some point. I think Mando season 3 is going to be Mando and Grogu both learning to adapt to accepting both sides of life, like Grogu with being with Mando in the Force, and then Mando dealing with like the whole Mandalore thing with the Darksaber and like his religion and having this Jedi with him. So I think that's what season 3 is going to be. But like originally I had thought season 3 was going to be Mando on his own while Grogu's off training with Luke, and we get to see bits and pieces of that and cutting back and forth. So
I think they could have done that better then. I mean, I get that that's a theory, and if it's something that they were shooting for, they could have done it better, because I mean, I get that that is the what Yoda would have taught in terms of attachments. I don't get why Luke was teaching that, unless he was like, I need to let go of what I believe, and I need to rebuild the Jedis, and the only way I know how to do that is to do it like Yoda would have done it. But I mean, just looking at how people reacted to it, people were like, "Dude, Luke's a dick," you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he just like, call an Uber with R2D2 back to Tatooine, he just looked like a sore loser, you know. So, and then, yeah, it doesn't make sense that that's where he's at now. And then it just makes the transition to old Luke in the sequel trilogy that much more like, all right, clearly something big happens between this moment and that moment. So I hope that we see more bits and pieces of him, or I hope they finally make that Sebastian Stan Luke show, because I would not be surprised if Mark Hamill has signed away his voice and his appearance to Disney and said, you know, give me X amount of money and you can do Luke as long as you want. Because clearly, I mean,
they already are. Like, he didn't do any of that dialogue. That was all from the archives.
But they credited him. Well,
yeah.
That was an AI programming too. They credited him. Just like when Carrie Fisher died and they said we're not going to bring her back, I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Hamill was like, you can bring me back as much as you want, you know.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, with deep faking becoming more of a thing, I wouldn't be surprised if more people are like starting to look into those type of lifelong extended life contracts where it doesn't matter if I die, my family can still get money if you can make it look good, you know. So yeah. I would love but I would love a Sebastian Stan Luke show to fill in that gap. I think that's what everybody wants, and they just need good writing for it. But I felt like it undid the power of season 2. But you know, and I felt like there were times in season 2 that Mando couldn't be as badass as he was in episode 5 because he had this little
Yeah.
foundling with him. But clearly, I feel like season 3 is going to be going to Mandalore and trying to redeem himself and going more into the history of Mandalore, and maybe we'll get more of Bo-Katan, and I'm excited about that. That's the sad thing. I'm more excited about Mando season 3 than more of Boba.
Yeah.
And I am excited about these other shows, and knowing that they've been in years in development and not less than a year of development gives me more hope for them than this.
So here's a thought that I forgot to bring up earlier. How much of this do you think was them adapting the Boba Fett film that was scrapped around the time of Force Awakens, the Josh Trank film? How much do you think it was them taking that and trying to make it into a show?
Yeah, because I do remember Josh Trank talking about. This didn't feel cinematic to me at all. It didn't feel like a movie that was stretched out and filled out for a show. It didn't feel coherent like a movie would have had to been.
Well, part of me can see like maybe the Tuscan Raider stuff was a bigger part of that movie, and then they had to adapt it to what they wanted to do with the character post Return of the Jedi, like as Boba Fett.
Was that movie teased before Boba's entrance in season 2 of Mando?
Yeah.
Or after?
That was way before Mandalorian. So part of me wonders how much of it was taking that story and adapting it for this. That may explain some of the issues, like that combined with writers not in the same room, being able to bounce ideas off of each other naturally. Yeah. But over Zoom. I think that could explain it. I don't know what the Josh Trank script looked like. I'm sure it had a number in place of a letter at some point. But
that guy just the story of Josh Trank is an interesting story.
Yeah,
I think part of it's his personality and part of it's the setup he was given. But,
yeah.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan came on the scene with these really creative indie films that just blew up, and then some idiot at Entertainment Weekly called him the next Spielberg, and suddenly he got this giant studio film of Avatar that was nowhere near his wheelhouse, nowhere near what he was known for doing, and it tanked. And ever since then, it's just been back and forth with whether or not he can handle it and whether or not he can hack it. And the same thing kind of happened with Josh Trank. He had these great indie small features that blew up that were like really cool. And then he gets this studio film, and the studio definitely used his name. Like, we're going in a different direction, but then they definitely came in and messed with him and messed with his film. Kennedy did the same thing with Star Wars. So
yeah,
I
remember he was on Kevin Smith's podcast for 3 episodes in a row, and they were talking about Fantastic Four, and like the fourth one was going to be after the film came out, and then like Kevin Smith came out and said like, yeah, Josh is like not talking to anyone right now, like he's devastated by what's happening with this movie, and like it's like he had like a small statement like, this isn't the film I made, the studio tampered with it. Like it's such a, like I would love to see his version of
time.
Yeah,
like at the same time he was very emotional publicly, and I think he had a lot of, like, compare that to what Snyder did with WB wronged Snyder heavily, and we now have the Snyder cut. But part of the reason why we have the Snyder cut is because in the years after that, Snyder never ranted online. He never bitched. He never started name calling and everything. Trank did that, and it came off as juvenile, and I don't think it helped him.
And I think like the middle ground is Lord and Miller, who are just now starting to talk a bit about what happened with Solo. But not like bad mouthing anyone. Like, we made mistakes, and
well, and that's a whole conversation about Kathleen Kennedy's leadership and everything.
Yeah.
This feels like a misstep, but there's still plenty of things that were cool about it. I would love to see more Cad Bane. I loved seeing the injections of these other things, and Dave Filoni just being able to take more of his characters, and then characters that weren't even his, like Black Chrysanthemum, and injecting them into this universe. It's cool. It's cool. It's what you would hope for these type of shows, to get these newer characters and introduced to the masses. And I mean, Clone Wars is amazing. Rebels has some great stuff. Bad Batch has some great stuff. And how else are they've been out for years and people aren't watching them. How else are you going to try to convince people to watch them than to inject some of those things into these live action things? And I like that they're doing that, because I feel like more people could enjoy those properties that haven't yet. So I did like that about the show. So it's not all bad. I was more disappointed, but only because I have high hopes for the future of Star Wars. Ever since Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have stepped on the scene, it feels like maybe we're getting a little bit farther away from the sequel trilogy and closer to what we all hope Star Wars could become.
Yeah, and we'll see what the next thing of Star Wars has in store for us in May with Kenobi. So
I know I was kind of sad we didn't get a Kenobi trailer at Super Bowl. I was begging for it. I was like, come on. Instead, we got Marvel cryptocurrency and electric cars. Like,
yeah.
I was like,
hey,
those are the only people that spent money on the Super Bowl.
I got to see JD and Turk singing to each other again. Like, that made me happy. So
that's true. When do you think we'll get a trailer for Obi-Wan?
Oh man. April.
I can't imagine them waiting till May 4th.
April, I would say.
Yeah. I'm surprised that Episode 1 isn't dropping on Star Wars Day, but it makes sense why it's dropping on 25th, because it's like 40 years after the original or whatever. So I guess that makes sense.
It's the anniversary. Yeah, it's like the 45th, I think, because it was 77.
So that's kind of a cool anniversary.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
I would say
I'm excited for that show.
Towards the end of Moon Knight, we'll get a trailer for it, because that seems to be the pattern. So like we got the trailer for Moon Knight like halfway through Boba Fett. We'll get a Kenobi trailer during Moon Knight in its run. So, but
well, being the Marvel correspondents that we are, I'm excited for Moon Knight. I'm excited for Marvel to come back with some stuff. The Doctor Strange trailer was amazing.
Yes.
I'm missing our Marvel talks, so
yeah.
That needs to come back.
Yeah, we need to do a preview for this year. We've been talking about it. We just need to make it happen. So maybe sometime in the next 2 weeks we'll get that done. Right here on Twitch.
Yep.
So, all right, I think that does it for us for this episode of Victims and Villains. Make sure to visit victimsandvillains.net for all your mental health resources. And check out our Facebook page to find out about the film festival we are hosting in Winchester, Virginia, coming up here at the end of April.
Yeah, 29th and 30th of April. If you're in the Winchester area, that's going to be fun. It's going to be at the Alamo there in the Winchester. I'm seeing if I can go. I think I might be able to make it work if I can fly out to be there for the Saturday event, but I think we're looking at, it was just going to be Saturday at the Alamo and then Friday online, but now it looks like it could possibly be both days.
I think it is actually both days at the Alamo now. So,
and I haven't seen I've only seen a couple of the films that we've got in, and the ones that I've seen are really cool. And so I can't wait. This is gonna be fun.
I haven't seen anything yet, but I have to start pulling things for the promo video. So I will see all of it here soon. So, but
I like stuff like that. I can't believe we're doing that. So if you're in the Winchester area, you should definitely come out for that.
All right. And Josh, where can people find you online?
Online.
Okay.
They can find me FierceLit or fierceliterature.com. That's for my book stuff. We got some Comic-Cons coming up, so I'll be posting more about that. Or just search for Joshua D. Howell or Fierce Literature on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and whatever else. I'm barely active, but when I am active, you'll see me.
Yeah. You can find me at You Have to Watch This Podcast. We're on all major podcasting platforms. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, right here on Twitch. And you can visit our new website, Runrunners Podcast Network .com/ You Have to Watch This Podcast. Still a new website, so I don't really...
You have to work on that.
I have to work on that. But yeah, find us on Facebook, and the links are there. So, and for Victims and Villains, until next time, I'm Alan.
I'm Josh. May the force be with you.
Like a bantha. We'll see you soon.